Joining us now is a safety and environmental consultant, Ayodeji Aluku. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Right.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Yes, same to you. Over time, like we said in the report, between December and now, and what we see in Australia, we've seen a rise in market fires in Nigeria. And one wonders, is it the weather? What is giving rise to these incidences?
Well, when you look at Australia, they have their fire, they have the meteorological issues and stuff. But in Nigeria, it's a cultural thing. And when you say cultural thing, it's quite funny because one, the cultural practice of safety, what we have to understand is with the advancement in technology and times we're in now, fire has also advanced. In the past 15-20 years, a fire could start and take 15 minutes to actually turn into an inferno. It takes less than 3 minutes for a fire to gut this place because of the type of equipment, or let me say materials, things are made of nowadays. So basically, the culture is affected. We have no safety practice. There are no guidelines. There are nothing really preventing such fires. Balogun market and other markets that were really got and stuff were not markets built for purpose. They came to meet the location they met there. And if you look at it, take for instance, maybe Balogun market, it could have started in an office upstairs in the building, and it got at the market. So if the culture doesn't change towards safety practices and environmental management, it still will continue because the baseline has not been
What is a culture that has to change now?
Well, it's deeper than just what we could explain here. But
just in layman terms.
Well, in layman terms, regulations should change, and I'm talking about the government bodies that should be able to regulate how places are, structured. Balogun market is now, and if you look at it, the enlightened people are not helping matters. And I must say this, you see a lot of stars, wealthy people or influential people coming to take pictures in a place where, at a flip of a coin, could be a place where a lot of mayhem could happen. Imagine a stampede happening in Balogun market.
Whoa.
People come into the country and they've got knowledge of how things should be arranged. They never bring it to a point that, they never bring up a discussion that this should be changed. The way things are arranged, the way stuff's stockpiled on stuff, it really, really affects us.
All right, if we have to go back to the basis, what should have been considered before citing a market in a certain place or allowing a market to, to grow to become the kind of market that we call a market?
Well, planning the footprint of the market is quite key. You look at accessibility. When the fire trucks came in, there was not much accessibility even in the market. You need to prevent roadside, markets and stuff. Even if they're going to be roadside markets, it should have been planned with ample space, in consideration. How people move. If there is a fire outbreak, what would be the channel of getting the fire trucks in? Also, we must consider, as I said earlier, fires are changing. Even the fire brigade need to change the techniques and even the chemicals, because these fires, as I said, doesn't just stay with the normal Class A, Class B, because a Class A paralyzes and turns to a Class B so fast because of the materials being used. Things are changing, so even the fire authorities need to change their approach. You're pumping hydrant water into something that the heat is so much that it's vaporizing the water off. So you're going to take longer to combat that fire. So the baseline is we need to research what is happening. Look at the culture. How can we ensure that people change the way they stockpile things, how they manage things? Is there an inspectorate that goes into the market to inspect? And until the government also, I must say this, changes the approach of revenue generation rather than implementing a change in culture of how these people do things, we're going to still be in the same problem. I must, if I would like to, let me use this example quickly. I was driving one time, I mistakenly took a one-way on a Sunday, and I realized it was a one-way and I was trying to turn back. And the girl told me, oh, go, it's Sunday. I was like, no. And a military man saw me, I said, no, you can go, they're not going to turn. But because the culture is, they believe they're going to extort you. So they're like, you're not going to be extorted today. Rather than if they had been turning people back and saying, look, it's a wrong one way, that culture, that ideology that no, correct people would have been ingrained in that child's, knowledge. And that's what we need to work on.
What comes to your mind when you see issues of reported cases of inferno in markets, especially from place to place, from Lagos to Ibadan to Benue to, even in the East?
Management, culture, regulations. So it's a combination of things, really. You look at how things have been set up. Basically, things have been set up in a way where most of these markets actually came to the location which are pre-existing. You take things like maybe like a computer village. It's residential, but then the market moved in. So it changes from the expected use of such places, and those kind of things bring a lot of hazards along with it, and increases the risk factors affecting such areas. And what is in the market nowadays basically also hamps up the hazard level. You could as well say, well, in Western worlds, they say, which is everywhere anyway, the construction sector is very hazardous. But the market sector in Nigeria is more hazardous if you look at it, because there's so many, there's a plethora, there's a multiple facet level of risks that could be involved in such areas. So a lot of things do come to mind.
So when you talk about regulations, because that's one of the things you mentioned as being one of the causes of fire, what are you talking about? Are you saying government regulation or the market having its own regulation?
Well, it starts from the government, really. The government, cascades down what they expect the market to do. So it's expected of the government to do an analysis, do a study of the baseline issues that are on ground, then create a regulation that will fit in there. We cannot actually just go forward and copy and paste regulations from international or Western countries, because they've studied their problems. They've studied what is peculiar, to their own markets. We need to understand the baseline problems, the baseline issues. How can we rectify this without totally disrupting? You can't just sometimes just uproot. It doesn't solve that. It might reduce that problem here, but it's going to create that problem. If you don't resolve the issues, you're going to take that problem.
But where we do not have perhaps investigations that could give figures and causes to all of these fires, what do you do?
Well, the problem with Nigeria is statistics anyway. We do not keep data. We do not study data that much. Some people might argue it, but look, data is quite key. If you check out the influx, the traffic of people, look, it's easy. Sometimes it's more selfish, because if the government wants to get money from something, and I say boldly to say, if the government wants to, they can actually do that data. But the data is more focused on revenue generation. But if you're looking at people's safety, human safety, look, the funny thing is, we all shelf this and think it can happen to me. A government official can be in the market and a stampede starts. It doesn't look at you and say, oh, you're a minister, you're a governor, you're a president. It would kill you. So that's the problem. We need to study data, really know what the problems are, and then resolve those problems than just moving the whole thing to another location that the problems follow to. Because you're going to create that same problem in that new location.
How challenging would it be to bring up a transformation of what we have right now? Because if you go to so many of the markets, not just in Lagos, across Nigeria, apart from very few markets that have structures and all of these precautions, if you go to so many of our traditional markets, it's it's very funny and terrible. But if we have to change things now, how challenging do you think it's going to be to start transforming all of those?
I think the problem is this. In Nigeria, we want a quick fix. Change management never is a one-day thing. There are some things where they're about 6 months for markets. peculiar markets have peculiar issues. So you study that. It might be a 3 month, 6 month, it might be a year. Even the implementation, you look at calling stakeholders, you know, having liaising with stakeholders, having discussions, making changes gradually. So to change a market could take there about 4 years. Sincerely, but when you ingrain this practice in them, then it would sustain itself going forward for the next 20 years if no changes happen. So it's never a quick fix. So the quick fix of relocating the market doesn't change the problem. It only moves the problem somewhere else. And in future, that problem will grow. And the people you're trying to protect are still in the market.
Now, it is said that prevention is better than cure. So I would like for you to talk to us about preventive measures now that can be taken not just in markets, but in places like offices like this to ensure that there are no fire outbreaks.
Yeah, that question really rings about something that it's cogent to how management actually work. The truth is, we're more reactive to these issues than being proactive. And it takes a management that really has foresight to think of this. You tell them you need to be proactive, which is creating those preventive measures on the ground. It's not to tackle it by putting fire extinguishers, but to have a management system that will basically ensure that the likelihood of such incidents, not just fire, to happen. So the preventive measures are more proactive than reactive. And unfortunately, every circumstance or every situation or event of these fires are reacted upon. Then you see the clamor, the news, the whole hype about it, and it all goes down.
So you're saying having extinguishers is not enough?
No, it's not enough, because you need to create management systems to ensure that the use of the extinguisher is known, the effective use anyway. In most organizations, most people don't know how to use the extinguishers. They are more aesthetic, part of the company. But you need to actually teach them things as simple as housekeeping, how people operate their systems, how you shut off your systems, you don't overload circuits and stuff. So on a more global level, you're looking at proactive measures to ensure that people have I talked about culture, people have a culture towards preventing accidents. Which includes both fire and stuff. So basically prevention, yes, is better than cure, but how do we prevent it? You tell someone, oh, you need to do this, and they're like, well, nothing has happened. An accident happens once, and it could take out everything. We need to know
so when it comes to that preventive measure, what should actually be those practical things? And from what point do you start thinking of that prevention?
From the beginning.
All right.
From the beginning. Take, for instance, you're building a facility. Basically, you should put into play the preventive measures, from the escape routes to the preventive fire retardant equipment, to even training the people that are going to work in that facility. Fires that happen in most of these markets may not have happened in a shop.
They're avoidable.
It might have been an office next to one of the stores. And when that happened in that office, it met with the other store, which had highly flammable, materials in them. And as I said earlier, basically, the fires have changed. Technology has advanced. Fires have advanced. It takes less than, and I categorically state, it takes less than 3 minutes for a room to be an inferno.
Why
from
is
a small fire.
What has made fires to change? Because if water is water, wind is wind, we think fire is fire. Fire should be fire. The sun is still the sun.
Technology changed, and when most of these materials paralyze, basically they have more chemical constituents in them, which are more flammable. So, and fire changed because it's faster, it's hotter. So when you look at how to put it off, you must look at how not just to douse it, but to extremely cool it down faster. So it takes longer for the fire service to put out a new fire in this era because the fire is changing its class. There is class A, class B, class C, class K, you know, kind of thing. But it's changing from class A to class B. Class A is ash and stuff, but you're looking at a plastic burning and melting into a boiling liquid. So it's changing faster and it's hotter. So we need to advance and change the way we tackle and prevent these fires. And also know how we arrange things that are flammable in a working space.
Ayodeji Aluko, thank you for talking to us.
Thank you very much for talking to us.
It's been a pleasure.
Right.
Yeah.